What is a legacy Christian band? Have you ever heard that title before and wondered what it meant? When someone calls a group a legacy Christian band, are they attempting to honor that group's past achievements? Or is something else going on? Stay tuned and we'll talk about it. Well, good evening and welcome back to another week of Explain, another week where we engage the culture from a biblical perspective in a manner which glorifies God. My name is Troy and I'm your host. Thank you so much for joining us for another week. This week is going to be a little bit different. You know, if you've been with us for any length of time, that we oftentimes like to dip into what's going on in the Christian music world. I am by no means an expert on that or on how the industry works or runs or anything, okay? This is just a hobby of mine. But nonetheless, I have noticed that the Christian music industry is serving as a microcosm of the culture around us, okay? That's in more ways than just one. I mean, we've talked in the past about, we did an episode, I think this was several years ago at this point, about how there were certain groups that decided to start swearing in their songs. Christian groups that decided to start swearing in their songs, all right? And we're supposed to be different from the world, and so I don't think that's a very good witness. There is that, right? As the culture around us became more and more profane, unfortunately, the Christian music industry, though at a distance, followed and became more profane in that sense, okay? So yeah, of course, there is that aspect of it, and we can talk about that another day. You could also, I mean, we did an episode about Derek Webb going into the Dove Awards dressed crazy. You can go check out that episode if you'd like. I won't spend too much time on that. I think that Derek Webb, I don't even really consider Derek Webb to be part of the Christian music industry. I think he was just trying to infiltrate it from the outside, to be completely honest with you. But anyway, all of that being said, I think another way that the Christian music industry can oftentimes mirror the world around us is in the idea of consumerism. Consumerism, okay? And I think that one way that you can see this in the Christian music industry is when you see the label legacy Christian band or a legacy Christian artist slapped on a group or an artist within the Christian music industry. Now, why do I say that? Because some people might be saying, well, I thought we were trying to honor these groups by calling them legacy Christian bands. And I'm not denying that. I actually think that people are trying to honor these groups by calling them legacy Christian bands. But just for the sake of it, I looked up what does it mean when you call someone a legacy Christian band? And of course, you know, you've got Google working for you now. You've got AI that goes out and compiles all the different things that people had to say about legacy Christian groups and puts it in this nice little paragraph for you, okay? I'm not saying that AI is great on everything, but it is helpful sometimes in those cases, okay? So let me read to you what I found, okay? A legacy act is in the context of music typically refers to an artist or band who, while still active or touring, is considered to be in a stage of their career where they are known for their past achievements and are no longer at the forefront of commercial success, but are still respected and remembered. Okay, I think that's a nice definition. That's sufficient for us. Okay, and again, this might leave you saying, well, I thought that when we called a group a legacy Christian band, that we're just trying to honor them for their past achievements. And that is true, okay? But let me give you a little bit of background just so you can understand why I'm coming at this topic. This might seem like a strange topic for me to be addressing. Now, let me tell you why. Because I've been noticing this for the past at least several weeks, maybe months, that people are more often referring to a lot of prominent Christian groups as legacy artists or legacy bands. You could think of examples of bands like that. would be a group like Mercy Me, okay, a group like Casting Crowns, an artist like Jeremy Camp, an artist like Matthew West, an artist like Toby Mac. Okay, these are people who oftentimes I feel like people will refer to as legacy bands or legacy acts. Okay, and I think there is an attempt to honor them for their past success. However, the other thing that communicates, and you can see that based off the definition that we just provided, the other thing that communicates is that these groups do not have their best days ahead of them. Now, some of them might say, "No, I don't have my best days ahead of me, and I'm gonna retire or whatever," and that's fine. But I've seen it I've seen it used to refer to people. I've seen this label used to refer to people who definitely have not said that, okay, who definitely do want to continue on in the industry, who definitely do feel like they still have good days ahead of them, okay? And so I think that while this is a good-hearted attempt to honor them for their past work, I think it also pushes them to the margins and communicates to people that they don't have anything ahead of them in their future. They don't have any good music in their future to keep bringing people back to them. Okay, and so I think that unintentionally pushes them to the margins. Okay, so just to throw a little bit of grounding, I guess you could say, behind what I am saying, I want to point you to a couple of passages. The first one is from Proverbs chapter 16, verse 31. It says this: "Gray hair is a crown of glory. It is gained in a righteous life." Now, I'm not saying, of course, that every single person who has ever been referred to as a legacy group is actually old or is actually has gray hair or something like that. Okay, the point is those who are older than me, I would say the application, for example, for me would be that those who are older than me, especially those who are significantly older than me, are deserving of my respect, are deserving of my honor. And again, I think that's what the label legacy Christian band, legacy Christian artist, attempts to do. However, in the process, I think it also pushes those groups to the margins. It probably hurts them more than it helps because it communicates to people that while they have this huge catalog of music from the past that you can go check out, and that's great, don't expect anything groundbreaking from them in the future. That's what it communicates to people. Okay, and that feeds, I think, into the consumeristic culture in which we live. And this is where, like I was talking about before, I think that the Christian music industry tends to mirror our culture in a lot of ways. Okay, and this is one way where that's the case, is consumerism. Okay, people are so often driven to the next big thing. And some of the people who are legacy groups started out as the next big thing. But many of the people who were the next big thing at one point, unfortunately, people don't even know who they are anymore. Okay, have you ever heard of a band called Abandon? Have you ever heard of a band called Rush of Fools? How about Mike's Chair? Okay, how about Pocket Full of Rocks? These are groups that at one time were looked upon as this next big thing, as this emerging artist. And because they were the new thing, because they were this new shiny thing, everybody was looking at them. But when the shine wore off, they stopped looking at these groups. And that's unfortunate because if you listen to these groups' music, it's pretty good. Okay, so it is sad in a way that people have decided to kind of turn their backs on those groups just because they're not the shiny new thing anymore. Okay, and I'm not saying that like any of those groups would be referred to as legacy groups. I think that that title is more often reserved for people who are really popular within Christian music. Okay, but the point still stands that because we live in a consumerist type culture, you can see the kind of, you could say, the fingers of consumerism reaching into the Christian music industry. And one place you can see that is when people feel the need, I think, to put a label. I think it's good intentions on a group, saying that they're a legacy group, for example. What people do, though, when they hear that, is they begin to assume that this artist's best days are behind them. All right, and this idea of legacy act, legacy group, this is imported in from the wider world. This is not something that is unique to Christian music. There's plenty of legacy acts within secular music. Okay, people say that stuff about any band. Right? People will say that stuff about any band who's popular. Even the definition that I pulled when I looked this up, if you go further down, it lists like Dolly Parton as a legacy act, for example. Okay, not necessarily a Christian legacy act, but just a legacy act. Right? That's the idea. But what happens is when that comes into the Christian music industry, people start slapping these labels on groups that I don't think that their best days are behind them. I don't think those bands would agree that their best days are behind them in every case. And so while I think the attempt is to show honor, the result, what it actually does functionally is it leads people to believe that they should go looking elsewhere because don't expect to see any groundbreaking stuff coming from this group. All of their best days are in the past, cataloged on dozens of CDs. Okay. So there is that. Let me put another verse behind this idea. 1 Timothy 5 verse 1 says, "Do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father, younger men as brothers." Okay, so again, this is just this idea that older men deserve respect from younger men. Pretty simple. This was even written to a younger man, to Timothy. Okay, and so Paul is telling Timothy, make sure you respect those men who are older than you. Okay, so again, I think this is a good-hearted attempt to show honor to groups that have been in the industry for a long time and who have many years of these great accomplishments. However, I think functionally it also pushes, in a weird way, people to look elsewhere for music now, because it's like, okay, this band was good, but they were good 10 years ago, and that's when all their hits were. And so naturally they say, okay, what band is good now? Not this band. They were good 10 years ago. That is where I think a lot of people's thought processes go. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not just spouting off this information either. I mean, you could see that in the definition that we pulled at the beginning of this show, and you can see it even if you go a little deeper and start looking into different articles that people have written. That is the essence of what it means to be called a legacy act. Okay. And so I guess the question that I would have for those who want to call these groups legacy acts is, first of all, is what you mean when you say legacy act. Do you mean that these people had a great career and they're towards the end of it? Is that what it means? Do you mean that this group's best days are behind them? Because if that's the case, I think many of those groups actually would disagree with that. Okay. And I think this, again, serves as a microcosm to something bigger that's happening in our culture. Okay. Our culture is always obsessed with the next big thing, the shiny new thing. The Christian music industry is like that too. Okay. Like I said, I just listed off a bunch of groups that were the next big thing at one point. Okay. And many of the people who are the next big thing now will not be, within a few years. Many people won't even know who they are anymore. Okay, and that's because of the consumeristic mindset that we have, where we're always looking at the shiny new thing. And if it's happening in the Christian music industry, then that means it's happening in the lives of Christians as well. And so the Christian music industry is simply a symptom of what's going on in Christians' lives. Okay, where we are constantly tempted to go after the new thing. Okay, we are constantly, and I don't even necessarily mean tempted in a bad way. That was probably a bad word choice, like drawn. We're drawn to the new thing. We're drawn to the shiny new thing. Okay, and that oftentimes, what is it that people often say in this culture? One of the biggest things that we do in this culture is we put a high value on youth. And that's completely different than the way that the culture has been in the past. Okay, there used to be a high value put on old age, put on wisdom, put on respect for those who are older than us. There used to be a high value placed upon that. Okay, and I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I think that that's what people are trying to do when they say this group is a legacy Christian group. But unfortunately, because of the base that they're appealing to, because the base of Christian music is Christians who have been influenced to be consumeristic by the culture, that term oftentimes backfires on the people who get the label slapped on them. Those people who end up being called legacy groups don't end up getting as much attention anymore, and that's just the truth. Is that many of these groups that end up being called legacy groups, you just watch because they start to get less and less and less attention. As a result of that, many of the ones who are really popular, like I said, like Mercy Me, like Casting Crowns, Jeremy Camp, Toby Mac, people like that, they're able to get through it. But there are other groups that when they're called a legacy Christian act, you watch because the next step is they're not going to get any attention, and people will assume that their best days are behind them. And pretty soon the only songs being played from them on the radio are songs from 20 years ago, even though the artist is still putting out music today. All right, so that is just an example of the consumerist culture that we live in. You can take this and apply this to any part of your life. What do you do, for example, when you see this shiny new thing come out, the new iPhone? Let's say that, right? The new iPhone comes out, right? And what do herds and herds of people do? You could say myriads upon myriads of people do. They throw aside their I don't even know, which iPhone are we on now? 16, 17? I don't know. They throw aside their iPhone 15, throw it on the ground, and they run to the store to get their iPhone 16. Suddenly, that thing that was just the shiny new object 15 minutes before the new iPhone ad dropped, suddenly it's not the shiny new object anymore. Suddenly it's collecting dust. You throw it to the side, you bring it into the store, you exchange it for the shiny new thing. And that's what happens in Christian music. All right? Well, at one point, someone's the shiny new object. And then you hear about the new shiny new object. And now the one that was popular, the one that was famous, the one that everybody was talking about, suddenly people are not talking about them anymore. Okay? And so why am I talking about this? What do we do in light of this? What kind of application could we draw from thinking about legacy Christian bands? Well, I guess if you want to talk about what's going on in the Christian music industry, I think that the legacy label that's being slapped on groups hurts them more than it helps them. Okay, and I know it's a good-natured attempt to honor someone for their past work 99% of the time, if not literally 100% of the time. However, I think that the thing it mainly helps to do is push those people to the margins, unfortunately. Okay. But as we zoom out to our lives, I think a great application for us would be that newer is not always better. Okay, the shiny new object is not the thing that we should always run to. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't find our ultimate joy and our ultimate satisfaction in chasing the next big thing. One thing, for example, that is old at this point, it's been around for as long as there has been sin. This message has been around, and that's the message of the gospel. You find it in Genesis 3:15. Right after Adam and Eve sin in the garden, the proclamation is made that one will come eventually. It's talking about Jesus, the Messiah, who will crush the head of the serpent. That's an old message. That's an old story. But guess what? That's the best thing that ever existed on the face of this earth, is the truth, the message about Jesus coming to redeem us from our sins. That's the best message that ever existed on this earth, and it's old, okay? And so instead of putting our hope in the next big thing and chasing after the next big thing, and chasing after riches by being consumerist, let's ground ourselves in the Word of God. Let's ground ourselves in what the Bible has to say and not be so consumer focused, okay? And so I think that the Christian music industry provides us with an example, a great illustration of the fact that even Christians are consumer-minded. They're chasing the next big thing. Now, let me offer a very important caveat here. Every one of these legacy groups were at one point the next big thing, okay? And so just because it's new doesn't mean it's bad in that sense, okay? So just because a Christian artist is new does not mean that they're bad. A good example of this would be Forrest Frank. I think that he's great. I love his music. So just because you're new doesn't mean you're bad either. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that oftentimes people will be willing to throw away everything that they've ever known to chase after the next big thing, the new thing, you could say. Okay. And so that is why I think that it's not necessarily a good idea to call a Christian group a legacy band or a legacy artist. Does it hurt their career? Yes, but it also feeds into the consumerist mindset that a lot of people have, where they will throw away that thing, that group, that shiny object that used to be shiny, and probably really still is shiny, but the news or the world or someone else is telling them it's not shiny anymore, right? So they'll throw away that legacy artist and they'll go chase after some other artist, some artist that put out music 5 minutes ago. It feeds into the consumerist mindset that we have, okay? And so I really do think that we find a perfect example, a perfect microcosm of the culture within Christianity in the Christian music industry. People are very, very consumer-minded, and it shows. Okay, well, that was definitely a different type of episode. I'll get off my soapbox now. But I really do think that as Christians, we should be thinking about consumerism and thinking about the ways that it impacts even our life. What are we focusing too much on? What are we coveting? Okay, what object are we coveting that we want and we can't have because we don't have the money? Or what object are we going to spend money we don't have to have? And those are all things that we should be thinking about when it comes to being a consumer, having a consumerist type of mindset. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. I hope you guys have a great week. Don't call anybody a legacy act. All right, God bless.